What's going on, everybody out there in DePaul, out there in Chicago, and out there in my mixed martial arts world? We had to take a week break due to me, Joe Sumo, being sick as a dog last week. Unfortunately, I couldn't get in the studio because there was a lot to talk about, but that's okay. We're back this week, and today I'm going to have a special guest in the studio. He's going to be talking mixed martial arts with us. We've got Eddie Alvarez versus Michael Chandler 2 that happened last week for Bellator. Awesome fight. We're going to talk fights of the year candidates. We've got Fight for the Troops tomorrow with Rafael Natal fighting Tim Kennedy, as well as this Saturday, fights in Brazil with headlined by Vitor Belfort against Dan Henderson. Crazy, crazy stuff going on in mixed martial arts, and you're going to get all of that because you've stepped inside the cage. That song means one thing and one thing only. You are inside the cage with me, Joe Sumo. And today I have with me good friend, awesome coach, just overall MMA guru, in my opinion. Good guy, coaches over at Energy MMA, Justen Hamilton. What's going on, buddy?
What's going on, man?
Just doing my thing here in the studio, holding it down. You know how it goes. This is my show. I talk mixed martial arts for the next hour, and you're my first official guest in studio, so that's pretty awesome. And it's good to have you in here simply because when I started doing mixed martial arts personally, like myself, you were the first person to train me in jiu-jitsu and show me how to actually get down on the mats.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I'm very honored to be the first in-studio guest. I remember... where did we go? We went to Southern Illinois or St. Louis or something to for your first jiu-jitsu competition. I remember being there for that and stuff. So it's been a long road. Yeah,
man. Naga, you, Mike Hayden, and myself, great time. One of the best times I ever had.
Absolutely.
Nervous as a dog. Ended up getting tapped out my first fight, but I loved every second of it.
Yeah, you did real well.
It's good, man, but this is now where I'm at. I'm comfortable. I know I'm never going to be a fighter. I love training and I love conditioning myself, but more than that, I love being able to talk the sport, and that's why I'm back here doing this. And it helps me when I can have a guest like you who spent a lot of his life kind of entrenched in mixed martial arts. So for those who don't know you, would you like to just give a quick background on how you got into mixed martial arts?
Sure. I did some of the more traditional martial arts when I was younger. I did Taekwondo, I did Jeet Kune Do, and it wasn't until I discovered jiu-jitsu that I really started kind of developing that passion. Well, I got really into boxing right before that, and it was boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and started picking up wrestling, and then started, competing in jiu-jitsu, had a mixed martial arts fight. I still compete in jiu-jitsu, and then started coaching, and just, martial arts has had like a real positive effect on my life, and it's had a significant effect on my life. It's that I actually teach for a living now, and it's a huge part of my life.
The transition to coach from actually training to be kind of a fighter yourself, what is that like, stepping back and kind of watching your students become the fighters now?
It's different, man. I mean, I started coaching pretty early on, much earlier than I should have. I kind of helped out as a jiu-jitsu coach at the first Wrecking Ball fight facility when it was in Grays Lake, Illinois, because they didn't really have anyone to, fill the position at the time. Coaching, it's much different. You really have to step back and, you have to, decide what's best for everyone else. You might feel like working on something else, but it's, what's best for your students right now. Or, if I feel like sparring at the end of the night, but what I really need to do is hold pads, then I've got to hold pads. Or, if I feel like, working on, my bottom game jiu-jitsu, but my students need to work on their top game, then we're working on top game, So there are a lot of benefits to it. And it forces you, it forces you to work on things you might otherwise not. So it's pretty amazing. I'm, really blessed to have that opportunity.
Now, you're coaching over at Energy MMA in Lakemore, for those who don't know. And when I first went in there, it was a handful of people at most inside of those jiu-jitsu classes. And since then, you guys have now got a roster of about, what, 5, 6, 7 fighters, roughly?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, let's see, yeah, we've got it's probably even a little more than that, if especially in terms of jiu-jitsu. But in terms of mixed martial arts fighters, yeah, I think we've had, I want to say 8 different people compete at this point. We've got a couple more coming up that are these upcoming cards that are going to be people that previously haven't fought before. So yeah, we've got a lot of different fighters filtering in now from other gyms too that have already had fights and are now before the guys that we had fighting, I kind of had to take from scratch somewhat, and now we have established fighters coming in that already know how to fight and they just want refinement, and it's cool. That's exciting to me it's instead of having to show the same basics every time, to have people that I can just show more advanced things to or fill in holes that they have, and it's fun. It's exciting. Everyone brings in something different, and I certainly learn every day from them.
Talking about the fighters you have on your roster, big card coming up this week, not this weekend, but this month at the end, the Hidden Talent card with a title fight on the line for one of your students, Mike Finch, also a co-commentator of mine and, kind of a mainstay here at the radio show. How do you feel about that? He's got a title shot coming up. I think he's, 3-0, 4-0 now?
He's 4-0 now, yeah.
And now he's getting a title shot and really kind of building some momentum as far as his name goes in this lower promotion, or at least in the amateur scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Finch is easily one of the most talented fighters I've ever worked with. He's a great guy, great friend of both of us. He's gonna do real well. I'm so certain that he's gonna win this fight. I have no doubt about it. And Finch is another one that when I met him, he was already a very, very talented fighter. But like anyone else, he had not even necessarily holes, but things that could be better. I think what I was able to see in Finch is potential he had in areas that he might not have thought he had potential in, that that we've been able to work on his game in different aspects that he might not have focused on before. And he's really, really tough fighter at this point. He's a really great sparring partner for me at this point too. I learn a lot every time I spar him, every time I roll him, and I have no doubt about it that he's gonna bring home the title.
I'm curious. You train these guys, you build these relationships with them, and then you take them out there into the cage to fight essentially for their life for, 15 minutes. What is it like for you as a coach? Like, what's going on in your mind when you're walking them out there to the cage, when you're cage side watching them fight? What are you feeling? Just what's racing through your brain, and how do you deal with those emotions?
It's nerve-wracking, man. It's a tough experience. When the very first time I did it was, I guess a couple years ago now. My first student that fought for Energy MMA, a kid named Zach Babiars, and I remember just being so nervous for him in his fight. And there's a certain level of responsibility that you take on for these kids, and if not only if they don't do well, but especially if they were to get hurt, you most definitely feel responsible. It's my job to give them the skills they need to be able to protect themselves in a very dangerous situation. And it's I have to know and really believe that I know what I'm doing. Otherwise, because they believe it, and if I don't know what I'm doing, they can get hurt because they're going to fight the way that I ask them to fight. Yeah, it's tough. It's such a rewarding feeling when they go out there and do well, which has been the case every time. I mean, these kids have been just on fire. I mean, and what I always tell them is it's never important to me whether they win or lose. It's important for me that they get that feeling. I want them to win, and sure, it looks great for the gym, but all I ever want is for them to do well and to showcase that they know how to fight, that they know mixed martial arts. And every one of my students has done that. There's not one fighter that's let me down in that regard. It's very important to me that I know for sure that they're ready to do that before they step in the cage. I would never put someone in there that, that I'm on the fence. Maybe they'll go out there and look good. Maybe they'll forget everything and fall back on what they think they know. And it's never happened, and it's not going to happen. So they've just done incredibly well every time. But it's still, even with someone like Finch or someone like Hayden, these guys that are, great fighters, Quinlan, Rolly, it's still nerve-wracking, and because, of course, the people they're fighting, they're good too. They take it seriously, and they're going against well-trained fighters. it only takes one slip up sometimes. So it's very nerve wracking. And I know what it's like, as a fighter to feel pressure and to underperform. And so, it's nerve wracking in the sense that, maybe they'll go out there, maybe they'll feel pressure. So I always try to address those things too. It's not only my job to, show them martial arts techniques, but, to explain to them how they're going to be feeling, or to be able to empathize with them and know what they're going through, and say the things that, that helped me when I was a fighter, or say the things that I thought someone should have said to me when I was a fighter. So it's a lot of different pieces to my job, I think.
You were talking about how well your guys are doing and them being complete mixed martial arts, and I think it kind of shows, even in the simplest form, in the record that your gym has accumulated over the past couple of years. I think you guys only have a couple losses outside of your whole roster of fighters, right?
Yeah, the record right now is 16-3, so it's pretty good.
That's awesome. And, I mean, one of those losses that I know of for sure was a loss that Mike Hayden took, which was actually a very good fight. It could have gone either way. I know that it just was one of those things, you leave it in the hand of the judges, and it's in their eyes and who they see it as the victor. But you guys could easily be 17-2 outside of that fight.
Yeah, and the other two fights, I mean, one of them was a title fight. So, is with Angel Cabrera, who's a great fighter. And
that's right.
He lost in a title fight. He obviously earned a title shot. He wasn't going against a slouch. And then the other fight was Kenny Persingers went against a really, really talented grappler, and he got beat. But he went out there and he looked fine. He was clearly ready. He didn't give up on the ground. He fought really hard, and he got beat. That's that I can live with. That's the reality of fighting. You're not going to win every fight. But there's not a single loss that I would say, he wasn't ready, or, I wish we didn't have that fight. They went out there and tested themselves, and 16-3. I'm pretty happy with that.
It's an awesome record for having a gym really put out fighters for the past couple of years only. So where do you see yourself and the gym, in the next 5 years?
Well, I think the gym has a lot of potential. There are definitely a few things that that we have to really work on in terms of a huge part of my goal with the gym is to succeed in mixed martial arts like we've been doing. And obviously, not only myself but all of us spend a lot of time and a lot of effort into making sure that happens. But the gym's also a business. We have to keep the lights on by having more and more students, and so those two can be conflicting sometimes. We have to cater to, what does your average client want, and, what's good for the fighters. And it's, you have to cater to a lot of different groups, and it's tough. So I think just, definitely the fighters do a good job of, they bring attention to the gym by their success. Ultimately, if someone sees them fight, they say, hey, here's, this talented, dangerous fighter that obviously knows how to fight. And this is where they learned. If I want to be able to have those same skills, I can go learn those skills at that place. That's ultimately the goal with any gym. But at the same time, we do our best to just keep the gym fun, and it's always very important to me that whoever fights, they handle themselves, like an adult. That when they go out there, not one of my students has ever won a fight and then celebrated, like an idiot. You represent the gym from the second you walk out there till the second you walk back to the dressing room.
It's one thing I've noticed commentating the fights and even being there as just a fan watching the sport. Every time somebody from Energy wins, it's a composed, it's a respect to the sport that you don't really see a lot in the athletes in mixed martial arts. And I get it to a degree. You're pumped full of adrenaline. You just got into a fight with somebody. You want to just yell and scream and go crazy. But there's a time and place for certain actions, and you've definitely done a good job of instilling a certain mindset in your fighters that, this is my job. This is what I've trained X amount of months for to do. I'm going to come out here and do it and show respect to the guy who I just fought with for X amount of minutes.
Exactly. And you're still in the cage, the person you just fought, their whole family's there, they've got friends there and stuff. You already won the fight. You need to rub it in by, dancing around like an idiot. This isn't an end zone dance. It's martial arts. It's so much about respect, and that aspect gets lost on a lot of people. And it's very important to me that our gym always carries that with us. And part of it is me instilling it in them, but because of that, they instill it in each other. Every new person that comes to the gym, everyone in the building is like that, and they see that and they adapt. If they don't adapt, they usually don't come back. Not everybody fits in there. And when they come to the gym and they say, there's nothing but positivity in this building, if they don't, if that doesn't match them, they're going to leave, And because of that, I have nothing but positive people in there and respectful people that, everyone in that building I also consider, a friend. At the end of the day, I get paid to be there, but I don't get paid that much. I want to enjoy myself when I'm there. And if I'm not going to enjoy myself if I'm hanging around people that I don't like, So, yeah, we have such a great group, and I'm always proud of how they handle themselves afterwards. And it's, to me, that's equally, if you go out there and you win, but, you disgrace the gym by jumping around like an idiot afterwards, I'm not going to be proud of you. It's just not how it works. And every one of them has, held their own in that aspect. Not a single person has let me down. So I've been very, very proud of them. And,
That's Justen Hamilton in the studio with me today here in the cage. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to find out what Justen thinks might be fight of the year this year. And there's a lot of fights to talk about. We'll be back. Yes, welcome back inside of the cage. And this is Joe Sumo. I'm here with my guest host today, Justen Hamilton, coach over at Energy MMA, and also, for all of you who don't know, quite the musician as well. You want to give a quick plug, man?
I haven't been playing as much music lately. I've been a little busy with other things. But, yeah, I'm a lifelong musician. You can check out some of my stuff. I think you could hear it at, just justenhamilton.bandcamp.com. I think you can hear it at. If you type in Justen Hamilton on Facebook, you'll find some stuff.
There you go. Yeah, I've been to one of his shows. It's good stuff, so go ahead and support. He's not just an awesome mixed martial artist, he's also a musician, so a jack of all trades, we could say. But outside of his musical talents and him being a coach, he's also a fan of the sport like myself. And what makes that an awesome thing to talk about is the fact that so much has been going on in mixed martial arts over the past couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I was gone last week, so I really didn't get a chance to discuss the Lyoto Machida versus Mark Munoz fight. And I guess the thing I want to ask you is, one, Lyoto Machida, he was already a champion at 205. And he went on to a 4-4 record after getting the belt, kind of looking like a guy who would be in the middle of the pack for the rest of the time, and finally made the decision to jump down to 185. Some people were saying it's the right decision for him to make. Some people were saying it's 20 pounds off. How's he going to look? Well, he went up against Mark Munoz, a top-ranked middleweight fighter, and he looked phenomenal. He ends up head-kicking him to oblivion in the first round. Do you think this is the weight class he's supposed to be in? Is this what we will expect from Lyoto at 185?
I really do. I think Machida is easily one of the most talented fighters in the world, and I think even at 205, I'm not entirely sure why he had been underperforming as of late. But even saying that, for instance, his last fight at 205 was the Phil Davis fight. And I thought he won that fight. I thought it was a close fight, but I thought he won. I think he should have pushed it more. But, we're talking about, these ranked number 2, number 3 guys that he's arguably beating. He's an incredible fighter. But I do think he'll be even better at middleweight. Obviously, he won't have quite the speed advantage he has at light heavyweight. But I think he's fast enough, man. I don't think there are a lot of guys at middleweight that are faster than him. Now that he doesn't have to deal with such a big size. Really, the only time I would say that he really, felt undersized was in the John Jones fight. He looked a little bit smaller, but even in that fight, he pushed Jones in a way that no one really had it, up to that point. Arguably winning a round, he landed a couple clean punches. Yeah, he was right in there with the champ. So I think Machida's great, but I think he's going to be even better at middleweight.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. He was already champion at 205, so it's obvious he could fight at that weight class, and he's fighting nothing but the best since winning the title. But with that being said, he did go 4-4, and Machida does have a style that sometimes can be lackluster. A lot of counter moves, a lot of backpedaling, looking for shots, and staying out of damaging positions. With that being said, I feel like at 185, because he's no longer kind of a middle-of-the-pack size guy at 205, he's now kind of a bigger guy at 185. It allows him to take more chances and more risks without the chance of damage being inflicted as much as it would at 205. The 20-pound weight difference is huge, especially when you're used to taking shots from guys who probably walk around at 220. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So at 185, I feel that Lyoto Machida is at the right weight class. What I'm worried about, or at least intrigued to see what happens, is if, let's say, Anderson Silva wins this fight against why am I brain farting? Help me out. Chris Weidman. Yeah. If he wins against Chris Weidman, and let's say Lyoto Machida wins his next fight in stunning fashion, it really throws him in the talks of championship contention. And then you've got guys who've obviously shown that they love each other, they're training partners, but they're friends, and say they never want to fight each other. Well, until recently, where Machida said he would be up to the idea of fighting Anderson Silva. I know it's far, far-fetched, but let's just go ahead and play imaginary land where Machida could fight Anderson Silva in the next year. Who's winning that fight if you have to see it happen?
I mean, that's a tough fight, man. Actually, until I don't know. I'd be kind of 50-50 on that one. I think Machida is the much, much better wrestler. I think he's up there with Anderson in terms of striking. I definitely wouldn't see Machida being outstruck unless it was a one-strike type of deal. I could see the fight being very similar to the Vitor Belfort fight, where you have you have a southpaw like like in the Vitor fight, for instance. I thought Vitor was outstriking the champ at the time. I thought he was kind of winning that round. He got a takedown off of a high kick. He was landing a couple punches. He was clearly the faster, tighter fighter in terms of striking, and I think Machida would pose those same problems outside of like a one strike type of deal like that, a crazy kick out of nowhere. I kind of feel Machida would have the advantage in the striking too, but Anderson just has that intangible winner quality about him. There have been many matchups where it was like, all right, I think this is probably going to be the one. It doesn't look so good for him on paper. And outside of that one fight with Weidman, he just always finds a way to win. And, obviously we haven't seen Anderson post Weidman yet. We haven't seen, what the effects are from that. But Anderson before that anyway, I think on paper Machida, but for some reason Anderson would win.
Yeah, I can't argue with you. I agree in a lot of areas. I'd say the striking's pretty on par. Nobody. It's hard to say because Lyoto Machida is such a great counter puncher or counter striker, but so is Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva makes a living out of making guys dive in at him and then picking him apart. So I don't know who to give the advantage to, but you're right. In my mind, I just feel like Anderson Silva always finds a way, and he'll find a way. But once again, this is all hypotheticals. He still has to get past Chris Weidman. Lyoto Machida still needs to at least win one, maybe two more fights before he even gets a title shot. So we'll have to wait and see. But it's always fun to play this, this idea of things that might happen, because who knows? This is mixed martial arts, and anybody that watches mixed martial arts knows that anything can happen.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see how much convincing it would take to get those two guys to fight, because even if they both win their fights, they've said that, they'll never fight each other. I don't know. I don't know if they would. I could see, Anderson is such a bizarre guy. I could almost see him, possibly even giving up the belt and saying, okay, it's Machida's time now. You never know. You never know with that guy. So
that's Brazilians for you, man. There's a whole nother level of love over there. Also going on in the mixed martial arts world is a lot of talk about great fights. And before I get into great fights for the year, I want to talk about one fight in particular. Last Saturday was obviously Bellator's supposed to be pay-per-view card. And with the backing out because of neck injury for Tito Ortiz, Rampage is no longer on the card. And now the card becomes a regular Spike TV card but it's now headlined by what I think most mixed arts fans thought should have been the headlining fight, which is Eddie Alvarez versus Michael Chandler 2. They had a Fight of the Year candidate about 2 years ago. Awesome fight. Since then, Eddie Alvarez has been in legal issues with Bellator and trying to get into the UFC. All of this was just playing out for way too long. Finally, they settled something where he could come back and fight for the belts. Here's his opportunity, and the guy just does not disappoint. Once again, it was a Fight of the Year candidate. These guys went back and forth. Phenomenal fight. I'm curious, first of all, what are your opinions on the fight? What did you think of the fighters and the outcome?
I thought the fight was outstanding. Those are two very, very top-of-the-line fighters that would, I think, have similar success in the UFC. I think they're easily at the top. They're great, great fighters. I was rooting for Eddie Alvarez. I like Eddie Alvarez a lot, and especially coming off such a long headache. I was really rooting for him, and but I wasn't overly impressed with him. I thought Chandler won the fight. I thought Chandler did a really good job of, kind of hitting opportune takedowns, and I don't think he really felt the need to force the takedowns too often. He seemed pretty comfortable striking with him. He put a lot of pressure on him. He had Alvarez against the fence a lot of times, and I will say there, I don't know. It seemed like he really wanted to try to show his striking for well, because even times he'd have him against the fence, he wouldn't clinch up, he wouldn't shoot, he'd kind of just keep stalking him, keep striking him, and you can definitely tell that he felt he was winning the fight. He fought like someone who knew that they were winning the fight and didn't feel the need to do otherwise. Alvarez, on the other hand, fought like someone who knew he was losing the fight and therefore pushed the pace more, and I think that that might have ultimately done it for him. I'm not sure which rounds were awarded to him, but I remember when when they first said it was a split decision, I was surprised even that it was a split decision, and they were announcing it. I was going, okay, Alvarez, say Alvarez, and then they said Alvarez, and I was like, really? Like I didn't think he won it, so I was conflicted.
Do you think that? I hate to say that there's tampering in the sport, but do you kind of feel like maybe they were pushing for Eddie Alvarez to win that fight, knowing that it automatically sets up a trilogy fight and that you keep him around for at least one more fight in Bellator?
I don't. I think that's an interesting angle to look at, and it's always tempting with something like that. Obviously, there was a lot of publicity behind Alvarez that I don't think has been matched by the publicity behind Chandler, and I think there were a lot of reasons that it could be enticing for Alvarez to win that fight. But I think it's separated enough between the promotions and the athletic commissions that it would be really, really tough to rig something like that. And also, I think it's just another showcase for the kind of ambiguity of judging in mixed martial arts. It's just, the criteria in itself is a little vague, and everyone that I've talked to about that fight says the same thing, and this is an argument that happens all the time, is they felt that Alvarez won on damage. Okay, a lot of people bring up damage. Damage is actually not in the scoring criteria of, the unified rules. The word damage is not used, and it's specifically not used because, when they were passing the unified rules, they avoided that word because they thought it wouldn't look right. They were having a hard time pushing these through, and they had to go out of their way to avoid that. Now, what they do say is, striking efficiency, effective striking is one of the criterion, and so you could say, damage is effective striking, but again, what happens is when people see damage, a lot of times they see the accumulation of damage. They don't view it as, okay, that one strike caused damage, we're going to reward that one strike heavily. They see this, overall each round, well, his eye is bleeding, so the other guy looks okay, we'll give it to the other guy, even though that happened 2 rounds ago. The fight that always sticks out into my mind to show, how hazy this is the first, and we're going to have to go a little ways back, the first George St. Pierre, BJ Penn fight. It was like BJ Penn's, I guess, second fight back in the UFC at the time. He was gone for a while. And what happened was, early in the first round, BJ Penn caught George St. Pierre with a thumb to the eye that actually made his eyelids start bleeding. It was an illegal strike, an accidental illegal strike that resulted in his eye bleeding. Seconds later, while GSP is, kind of, wincing and trying to see out of that eye, he gets caught with an uppercut that just catches the end of his nose, and his nose starts pouring blood. So now you have this situation where you have 2 strikes, one of which was illegal, 2 strikes, one legal strike that caused a nose to bleed and his face to bleed, and the whole rest of the fight he's bleeding. With the whole rest of the fight he controlled. It was just this 1 second where he didn't control, and it was a split decision that people argue to this day should have went to BJ Penn. And everyone says, look at GSP's face, look at BJ's face, look at GSP's face, and you have, it's a result of 1 illegal strike and 1 legal strike, and it, but it was damage, and it's luckily, they rewarded that fight to GSP, who in my mind clearly won it, but it's still disputed to this day because of that. It's tough not to see it that way.
Yeah, I vaguely remember the fight after you bring it up, but outside of that first round, I could have sworn that GSP kind of dominated the grappling contest for the next 4 rounds. Rightfully deserves the decision. I also understand what you're saying from the aspect of fighters who just cut and bleed easily. One of my favorite fighters, Nick Diaz, that guy gets punched once and his eyelid's wide open. So it's at that point, it's like, well, oh my God, has he just been getting his ass whipped this whole time? No, just some guys just cut. They got scar tissue built up. They're easily open. It happens. And the Alvarez-Chandler fight, effective striking, I still believe, goes to Eddie Alvarez, simply because I've watched the fight twice. I need to watch it again. But I just felt every time they were having an exchange, a lot of heavy shots were being thrown by Chandler but weren't landing, whereas Alvarez was the more crisp, compact puncher who was getting good combinations off. So if we're talking striking, I give the edge throughout the fight to Eddie Alvarez. Though he did get caught a couple times, he landed more effectively. Outside of that, the grappling edge obviously goes to Chandler. I just didn't see enough of Chandler dominating the grappling side outside of the 4th round to say that he won the fight just off of his ability to close off the cage. Either way, it was a phenomenal fight.
Oh, no doubt about it. And a very close fight. It was, by no means do I want to give the impression that I thought, Michael Chandler blew Eddie Alvarez out of the water, because he didn't. It was a very close fight that could have gone either way. I was pretty sure it was going to go one way, and I was surprised that it didn't, even if in a sense I was happy that it didn't.
So let me ask you this now. After that fight, we literally have 3 fights over the past month that have all gotten Fight of the Year candidate written on them. Starting off with Gustafsson versus John Jones for the belt about a month ago. And then about 3 weeks ago, we had Gilbert Melendez versus Diego Sanchez. And now last Saturday, we get Alvarez-Chandler too. All these fights are phenomenal fights. All of them are some of the best fights I've seen in a while. And they've all happened in the last month. And now they're all Fight of the Year candidates. I'm going to put you on the spot. Which one right now, if you had to vote, would be your Fight of the Year?
So here's the thing: is it depends on what makes a fight so great, what makes a fight of the night, what makes a Fight of the Year. Oftentimes, one of the things it comes down to is how big the fight was. With John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, if you didn't know either one of those guys, it would be a really, really great fight. But what was such a good fight about it is you couldn't believe that John Jones was being pushed like this. You would have never seen that. And if you weren't excited at the possibility that he might lose, you're not a fan of mixed martial arts. It was hard not to be swept up in it, because you felt like you might be witnessing history. You might actually see John Jones lose, who has looked inhuman. But that being said, the fight itself was outstanding. But I think that's what made that fight so great. Obviously, they both pushed it. Obviously, it was a war. But what made that fight so great is you just couldn't believe it was happening. And we got to see a different side of John Jones and a different side of Alexander Gustafsson. We've never seen him stop takedowns like that. We've never seen him hit takedowns like that. It was, we got to see John Jones taken down in a fight for the first time.
Got the first takedown of the fight.
Oh,
it was
Gustafsson. By a 6'5" non-wrestler. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's what made that fight so exciting. What else we have on the list? We have the Diego Sanchez versus Gilbert Melendez. Yeah. Now there's a fight that, you have two well-known guys. What separated that fight is just how scrappy it was, how much damage was done, how busy both fighters were, the punches that were landing, how clean some of those punches were landing, the exchanges on the ground, I think outside of where it looked like, I think Diego got hurt in the first round maybe, and Gilbert got hurt briefly in the third round. Outside of that, neither one of them was really close to finishing the other, especially on the ground. Both of those guys are so good and so bad at giving up their back that it's so exciting. Oh, he's got his back, and then he's got his back, but really neither one of them has anything because they're so talented defensively.
Yeah.
But that was just a scrap, such a good scrap. On a second viewing, I gotta say I wasn't as impressed with the fight as I thought I was the first time, and with maybe as impressed as Joe Rogan was.
Right.
But undoubtedly an incredible fight, though. Don't get me wrong. What was the third fight? The Chandler Alvarez fight. Now the Chandler Alvarez fight didn't have those big moments like the Jones fight or like the Diego fight. No one really got dropped. I think Chandler stumbled for a second. There was some control on the ground. It didn't quite have that, but that fight was so close, and there was so much tension the whole time. You felt like, if Alvarez doesn't defend this takedown, he might lose the round. If Chandler gets hit with one more punch, it might sway things. So that was, that's what made that fight so good. It was so close. You have these two fighters that are both so talented that at any second, the tide could turn. So. But I want to nominate another fight that I think has been criminally underappreciated.
What? Something that's not one of those three?
Something that no one has been talking about that I could see it not being fight of the year, but in my opinion was round of the century.
Wow.
Round of the century, and I've not heard one person talking about it.
This is big talk. You're really hyping this up right now.
Would you like to hear about it?
I swear to God, that's all I want to hear.
If you'd like to hear about it, I suppose I could tell you about it.
Please.
Round of the century. Dustin Poirier versus Eric Koch.
Ooh,
have you seen it?
Okay. Yes.
I thought that first round was possibly one of the most intense rounds of mixed martial arts I've ever seen. Now, as a martial artist and as a martial arts coach, I'm always going to be inclined to enjoy fights that showcase good, solid technique as well. That's one of the things. If you ever, for those of you guys that don't watch Muay Thai, as competed in Thailand, one of the things about their scoring system is they actually will reward for the performance of the technique, of Muay Thai, how well you're performing Muay Thai, and a crisper combination or a better performed, sweep will be rewarded more highly than a sloppy punch. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think it's something that should be adopted for mixed martial arts. But as a fan, I'm always going to really appreciate, a technique that was just so good. And that first round, if you haven't seen it, is just incredible. And it's incredible because both fighters were so close to being finished in the span of like a minute. It was just so crazy. What happens is Dustin Poirier drops Eric Koch. I don't remember what it was that he dropped him with. Drops him with something, and then you think he's going to finish him. I mean, he followed up with nasty ground and pound. He had him seriously hurt. Koch slaps on a triangle from the bottom in the midst of this and catches it full on triangle. We're talking as full of a triangle as you can get. And Dustin is absolutely stuck in this thing. He's doing anything he can. It is locked. It is shin under the knee. It is just could not have been tighter. He's trying to fight his arm out of position. At one point in the middle of it, I think he rests for a second. He had to burst so hard that he had to actually just sit in the triangle for a second, tries a second burst, finally gets out of it, and is so close to being finished and had to put so much effort, falls over once he gets out of the triangle, and then immediately jumps back on him. It was the best round of mixed martial arts I think I've ever seen. I was so impressed and so shocked when I heard nothing about it. I remember seeing that fight and saying, all right, well, everyone else can try to put up a good fight, but that fight of the night's already over, And they didn't win it. They didn't win fight of the night. I don't remember which fight. I think that might have been the Jones card. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe not. I don't remember which card it was, but they didn't get fight of the night, and I was just shocked.
It was the Anthony Pettis versus Ben Henderson card.
The Pettis. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Which was what, a 1-round fight?
Yeah, that went 1 round.
And I think they got fight of the night.
No, did they?
Whoever got, or maybe not. No, I'm sorry. It was another 1-rounder. I'm trying to. It was on the undercard, or it might have been on the main card.
I think
it was. Do you have the card up there?
No, I have the fight up.
It was someone else who someone got finished in like the first round.
I know there was Frank Mir and Josh Barnett on that card.
Wasn't that?
I don't think that was it either.
But I could not. What made that fight special is someone got just hurt really bad standing and somehow didn't get knocked out for like the next 30 seconds, but then ultimately did get knocked out 30 seconds later.
Yeah.
And it was really just the punishment absorbed, I guess, got him fight of the night, but I think those two got robbed.
Just for my 2 cents, I'm giving fight of the year to Nick Diaz versus Takanori Gomi. I don't care how old that fight is.
I can't disagree.
We're going to take a quick break. When we get right back, we're going to talk Fight for the Troops and UFC in Brazil, Vitor Belfort versus Dan Henderson. This is Joe Sumo, and you are inside the cage. Welcome back inside of the cage. This is your host, Joe Sumo. I am here with my guest host, Justen Hamilton from Energy MMA. We just got done talking Fight of the Year candidates, as well as Justin's career as a coach, and a lot of other jazz going on in mixed martial arts. But right now, we're going to take a second and talk about this Fight for the Troops card coming up tomorrow. It's headlined by Rafael Natal versus Tim Kennedy. And really, there's not many fights I want to talk about, but there's a couple I want to get your opinion on because we're a little pressed for time. The first one I was thinking about was Colton Smith versus Michael Chiesa.
Uh-huh.
Both of them talented guys.
Yep.
Both of them Ultimate Fighter fighters. And I think they were both winners as well. So you got 3-2 Colton Smith versus 91 Michael Chiesa. Chiesa just lost to Jorge Masvidal. Looking to get a rebound in the UFC. Who do you got winning this fight?
To be honest, I don't know a whole lot about either fighter. Colton Smith, all I saw was his Ultimate Fighter winning performance against who's the guy who trains in Canada?
I want to say, was it Mike Ricci?
Yes, against Ricci, which he completely dominated with wrestling. Didn't push for the finish, but dominated every second of that fight. He looked good as a grappler. That's the only time I've seen him, and I don't think I've seen Michael Chiesa fight. I might have and forgotten about it, but I don't know a whole lot about him. I thought Chiesa is a very imposing grappler, and I do like that he realizes that's his strength and sticks to it. Is he lost a fight in the UFC?
Chiesa?
No, Smith.
Yeah, he lost his last fight.
What was it? I feel like I did see that.
Let's see. It's I think he got knocked out. He lost by TKO to Robert Whittaker.
I think I did see that fight, and I don't think he pushed the grappling as hard as he should have. It's a pattern you tend to see. That's what I was just talking to someone about this, that I was rewatching The Ultimate Fighter season 4. I was rewatching the comeback season, and I realized how interesting it was to see Matt Serra's wrestling style at the time, especially when they were showing his older fights, where it was like a lot of wrestling techniques that you don't see anymore. You don't really see guys that like drop down to their knee and really push for a double or a single that hard anymore, and and chain it together. It's a lot of this, every takedown has to be from your feet, where you kind of just level change a little bit and bend at the waist and push forward. And I don't get it. I get the point of it. You try to avoid kind of winding up in bad spots, but you have these really talented wrestlers that like someone like, I think Phil Davis is a perfect example of someone who is such a talented wrestler, and you haven't really seen it lately. He hasn't looked like that imposing of a wrestler lately. And I think it's this change of style, and I don't know why people are, submitting to that so much of, they this need to adapt their wrestling style to like a striker base with just tying in simple takedowns. And that's what I liked about Colton Smith in the Ricci fight, is it was wrestling for wrestling. It was really good wrestling. Who I do think is a great example of that is Cain Velasquez.
Yeah,
Cain Velasquez
certainly
is such a testament to how imposing it could be when you really focus on one area. And he's also obviously a very talented striker, very talented from the clinch. But when he wants a takedown, he pursues it. And if he doesn't get it, he tries again. He has a game plan, he sticks to it, and he forces it.
Certainly.
And I think that's what makes him so talented. And I think Smith kind of has that potential. Did not show it in his last fight, though.
Also, don't forget GSP, kind of like
absolutely.
the creme de la creme of grapplers.
But GSP is one of those guys that really has 2 or 3 takedowns that he likes. I think that might. It's good that you brought that up. He might be the reason some of these people end up going with a style more like that. Where GSP, he doesn't really do a full shot anymore. He likes to kind of bend at the waist and take you down from there. But his timing is unmatched. There's not a single person in mixed martial arts that has GSP's timing.
Certainly.
That's why he can do that.
And the explosiveness, too.
Yes.
His ability to cover distance really quick and find the right time to hit that angle.
And you see someone like even, as much as we love him, Nick Diaz, horrible wrestler. He just is a bad wrestler. And he was able to stuff a couple takedowns from the champ, from GSP, by forcing GSP to shoot outside of his normal timing. And when he doesn't have that timing, those kind of takedowns aren't going to work. GSP is a talented enough wrestler. He can, if it doesn't work, he'll find a different way. But some of these guys that get, that fall back onto this, I'm just going to do a double from my feet, and that's all it's going to, or like Koscheck did that for a while. If you go back to his fight with Alves at the time, everything was just a single bent over at the waist, and you're talking about possibly the greatest wrestler ever in mixed martial arts. Koscheck is a really solid wrestler who should be able to take down just about anyone he wants. And when he has the right mindset, I think he's able to. And when he doesn't, he can't.
So, I'm guessing you're thinking Michael Chiesa wins?
I think I'm thinking Chiesa wins. I know I just didn't answer that question at all.
It was a nice tangent. I enjoyed it, though.
I think if Colton Smith sticks to what he's good at, he can win. But I don't think he will. I don't think he's going to stick to what he's good at.
I think Michael Chiesa is the kind of guy who does stick to what he's good at. He knows how to grapple. He likes to get in and get into a jiu-jitsu match. He'll do it with Colton. He'll find the advantage, and he'll capitalize. I give the fight to Michael Chiesa. I'm going to go with 3rd round submission, even though they'll be sweaty as heck. Jorge Masvidal. He's back in the cage against, I hope I say his name correctly, Rustam Kabalov.
It's about as close as I can get, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. Both of them super talented fighters. We all know, I think, quite a bit about Jorge Masvidal. He was very talented, high-ranked in Strikeforce, came over to the UFC, still an imposing fighter. Rustam, for me, is somebody I don't know too much about, but I look at his record, and he's 16-1. That alone is impressive. Then I go down and I try to find out, well, what kind of fights has he had? He's won his last 2 fights in the UFC, and his only loss was a split decision. So, to me, it shows a guy who has obviously been through the trenches. He doesn't have, like, cage jitters. So I don't think he's going to be intimidated fighting somebody like Jorge Masvidal. Do you have an opinion on this guy? Do you have any insight that you could give us or any idea who you think might win?
I could see the fight going either way. Obviously, Masvidal's the veteran in that sense. You know, he's been there. He's had these high profile fights that Rustam hasn't had just yet. But that kid is. I mean, you want to talk about an imposing grappler? He's an imposing grappler, and his takedowns that he hits, he doesn't hit the most orthodox of takedowns. He goes, he takes you down in ways that a lot of people aren't used to be taken down, and kind of like, he likes these suplexes that, they score, but at the same time, they do psychological damage to the opponent. You get picked up and slammed like that, you just don't feel good about yourself. You're not, you feel less confident. You look stupid. It's not what you're trying to do, and it could really, take your will away sometimes. I think Masvidal is he's one of those guys he's almost too tough for his own good sometimes, where he's like, he's a tough guy. He doesn't like to run around complimenting everyone else and stuff. He likes to focus on himself, and he's a tough guy. So you could see him having a strong will. He might not have that, that same effect if he gets picked up once or twice. It's going to be a tough fight, man. If I had to pick, I'll go with a late Masvidal finish of a fatigued Rustam
Kabalov.
I think Masvidal wins a late TKO.
I agree with you. Masvidal will win, but I'm giving it to him in the first round. He lands some nasty strikes as Kabalov tries to come in for something, and he finishes on TKO first round. Ladies are on the card. Liz Carmouche, we all love Liz around here, is fighting Alexis Davis. Both very talented women, and if you know anything about mixed martial arts, the women fights almost always steal the show. These two girls would not surprise me if they got Fight of the Night honors. But we need to know who's winning the fight. I go to you, my MMA guru.
Okay, I will actually give you a clear, concise answer this time. I say Carmouche smashes Davis.
Quick note, Alexis Davis, 14-5. Not a bad record. In her last 7 fights, she's 6-1. And she won her only fight in the UFC. Liz Carmouche, 9-3. Liz Carmouche is 1-1 in the UFC. One of those fights was for a title against Ronda Rousey. Both talented women, but this is one of those moments in my life where my bias has to come out. I like Liz. She's my girl. I ride for her. I think she wins the fight. Dominating performance. She's going to get a unanimous decision. Outside of that, there's the main fight. Tim Kennedy versus Rafael Natal. And personally, I'm just going to throw it out there. It's fighting for the troops. Kennedy, an ex-troop himself, I think gets up for this fight more than anybody else on the card. He's going to want to prove something. He's going to prove his merit, his grit, that American pride. And even though Rafael Natal is a talented fighter at 17-4, I think he's going to get overwhelmed by a guy who's proven that he has no issue fighting jiu-jitsu fighters or grapplers from Brazil. I'm going to give Kennedy this fight personally. 3-round unanimous decision. He just smothers Rafael Natal until the bell finally rings.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kennedy's going to win this fight. I am an admitted Kennedy hater in a sense. I don't like Tim Kennedy, but I think he's a very, very talented fighter. And I agree. I think he's really going to be up for this fight, like you said. And I think Natal's a great fighter, but I don't want to say that it's a gimme fight for Kennedy by any means. But I think they could have given him a harder fight, and I think they're somewhat giving him a winnable fight in front of the troops is what I think this is a little bit. And I think it will be a great fight, but I think Kennedy will finish him on the ground. I think TKO, ground and pound, or unanimous decision. But I think it'll be his grappling that it wins him the decision. Yes, I'm not a fan of Kennedy. It's tough to pick against him. He's a very talented fighter.
I like his personality. I'm not a big fan of watching guys wrestle in mixed martial arts when that's like the only thing they bring to the cage, but I can appreciate it when you do it well and you make it exciting. And I feel like Tim Kennedy has always managed to get himself in exciting fights as a grappler, so I can appreciate it. Like you said, he's going to get up for this fight. He is going to have something to prove. And if this is kind of just a setup fight for maybe something bigger down the road, we'll find out certainly tomorrow in his ability to whether he'll be able to handle Natal or not. We're running out of time, so I don't want to dive too much into the card this Saturday, but there's one fight in particular that I know is on everybody's mind, yours just as much as mine. It's really the fight of whose TRT is better. Dan Henderson versus Vitor Belfort. Dan Henderson, over 40, yet he's still a scary guy. Very strong fighter, very good fighter. Whether it's the TRT or not, he has managed to fight into his 40s and do it at a high level. Vitor Belfort, also getting up there in age, also a very good fighter. He's won impressively in his last few fights, knocking out Luke Rockhold, and he knocks out, who did he knock out in his last fight? I'm not going to be able to think of it for the life of me. He knocks out somebody else. I don't want to say it was Michael Bisping, but it was somebody up there, a ranked opponent.
He knocked out Bisping.
He knocked out Bisping as well. Either way, he's looking good. Also a TRT user. And I don't really want to make this about TRT because that's a whole other segment in itself. I just have to throw it out there because it's something that can be talked about. Let's just go ahead and put that aside and say these are just two great fighters fighting each other this Saturday, which we can all agree on. Who do you have?
Vitor is my original favorite fighter. When I first got into mixed martial arts, Vitor was my guy. Seeing him knock out Scott Ferozzo, Tank Abbott, back in the day, he was my guy. To be honest, last night at the gym, I actually taught a guard pass that I initially learned from a Vitor Belfort DVD years ago when I very first started training jiu-jitsu. It's hard for me to not root for Vitor. I always root for Vitor. To be honest, I've kind of picked against Vitor the last couple fights as much as I want him to win. I didn't think he was going to win his last couple fights, especially the Rockhold fight. I was blown away when he knocked out Rockhold, who I think is a very, very talented fighter. This is another one that, to me, on paper, I kind of think Henderson should win, but I say, you know what, I don't know. I'd say this time around, Vitor should win. I remember being really disappointed when he lost the first time, and I thought he underperformed. I think Henderson's a much grittier fighter than Vitor. He's usually stronger-willed, but lately Henderson hasn't looked in that good a shape. Vitor's been looking fantastic. Henderson's really slowed down. His wrestling is nowhere near what it was the first time they fought. I think Vitor should win this.
Yeah. Dan Henderson's definitely showed his age his last couple of fights, and I hate to say that because I'm a diehard Dan Henderson fan. I've loved him throughout his career. I think he's the real, Captain America. I know everybody gives that accolade to Randy Couture, but in my opinion, it's Dan Henderson. But like I said, he's over 40. He's looked over 40 his past couple of fights. And Vitor Belfort has looked everything else except an aging fighter. I mean, he's looked faster, stronger, smarter over his last couple of fights. And it was Michael Bisping and Luke Rockhold, his last two knockouts. With that being said, I'm rooting for Dan Henderson to win this fight, but if there's money on it, I think Vitor Belfort dominates him. It's hard for me to see him knocking out Dan Henderson, but it's not hard for me to see him picking apart Dan Henderson and dominating to a decision. If he tries to get into a scrap with Dan Henderson, I would not be surprised if Dan catches him with something.
Yeah.
Dan's really good at that, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Vitor Belfort wins a unanimous decision and probably retires Dan Henderson after this fight. I think it's his last fight on his contract.
Yeah.
And, you're not getting any younger. If you're not going to win this fight, when are you going to win?
Yeah,
so
it's possible. It's incredibly impressive how well Dan Henderson has really done. Because he's fought nothing but the best. I mean, when has he had an easy fight? But But yeah, I think Vitor should win this. But the fact that we're even talking about can he beat Vitor Belfort right now just shows you how talented of a guy Dan Henderson is. And he easily could win this fight. And he's always, with Dan Henderson more than anyone, is always one punch away. So you never know.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we have run out of time. I got to say, Justen, it's been a pleasure having my first guest in the studio, and it couldn't have been anybody better. You're very knowledgeable. You're a good man, and I appreciate the opportunity for you to come in here and let me pick your brain for a little bit on mixed martial arts. I guess I give you this second now to maybe plug yourself, your gym, and whatever else is going on.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on here. I really, really appreciate it and had a really good time. The gym is Energy Sport Complex in Lakemore, Illinois, Energy MMA. You can go to energysportcomplex.com and just check us out. We've got some really, really talented fighters. We've got some really good ones that are fighting soon for Hidden Talent. We have Rolly Baguisa. We have Jonathan Quinlan. We have Mike Finch fighting for a title. And then Michael Hayden will be right back in there pretty soon. We got some up-and-comers that you're going to be seeing real soon, too. So just for all things Energy MMA, energysportcomplex.com.
That's Justen Hamilton, folks, and me, once again, your host, Joe Sumo. Excuse me, as I crack like a 13-year-old boy. I'm Joe Sumo. That's me. This is my show, The Cage, and I'll be back next week doing this thing all over again. We'll be talking more mixed martial arts. Thanks for tuning in, guys.